distinct servers. I'm not talking about like virtualized servers or anything like that. Two completely distinct servers. I can have a domain that spans across multiple servers. This is one of the real powers that goes along with Weblogic. Now, virtually any application server, any modern application server can do that, can do this these days. The difference that separates Weblogic from all the other ones is the ease with which you can set these up and the functionality that goes along with clustering. True clustering, again, I mentioned this a little while ago. If you have a transaction that's going on one server and that server crashes for whatever reason, you don't want to have to deliver an error message to your end user. If one of the servers does crash, all of the transactional information is transferred to the second application server automatically. So the user might have a brief pause where they have to sit there for a couple of seconds because things are being transferred over, but they never lose that transaction. If they have a shopping cart and they've been shopping on your site for 20 minutes, I put this in, I take that out, I put that one. You don't want to have to say, oh, there's a system error, you got to go all the way back from scratch again. You want to give them the ability to pick up what they were doing and continue on. And one of the really nice features of Weblogic is that allows you to do that. You can also enhance a lot of that functionality if you have a rack database behind the scenes, which again, if you're in an enterprise, you probably have some kind of clustering environment. So again, when I set up my domain, I always have the admin server, right? It's got to be there. I'll have a managed server, maybe it's J2E, maybe it's a SOA server, maybe it's a combination of different things. But I can also have a managed server running on a different machine. And we talked about all the different things that an admin server will do in this type of situation. When I have a new application or an update to my application, I go, hey, I'm going to deploy this new application. It's the admin server that says, hey, not only do I have to copy these files to the directory structure for the managed server, I have to go to the managed server 2 on this other Linux box and pump all of the files over there also. You may look at this particular environment and say, well, what happens if Linux server 1 crashes? I lose my admin server. The way it is set up is that managed servers can continue to function even if the admin server isn't there. So the managed server 2 on Linux server 2 will continue to function in a special mode and it can continue to process transactions even if I lose the admin server on my first box. I need the admin server obviously to do anything, and I'll have to recover that first machine, start up the admin server will go, oh crap, I got all of this other stuff I got to catch up on because somebody deployed an application, those transactions, and it'll automatically rebuild all of the pieces of managed server 1 for me automatically. But again, we want to try to eliminate as many single points of failure as we possibly can. And in this environment, Weblogic allows us to do that pretty easily. So out of the box, the Weblogic server can create Java Enterprise Edition managed servers. The admin server, again, is fully functional JEE server, but you shouldn't deploy your applications there. That's not what it was intended for. It was kind of intended to be the admin server, and it's better to isolate it for that. Additional functionality is provided by managed servers. What are some of the managed servers out there? SOA Suite. The SOA Suite uses all the different tools that are out there, and web services is just one of the many things that go along with a typical SOA type application. There's a whole bunch of different other functionality that's out there. And one of the real nice things about the SOA Suite are some of the tools that come along with monitoring your applications that are out there. Because think about how complex we're talking about now. We're talking about a real 3-tier architecture, so we got to monitor security and performance and availability, clustering availability. Now we're talking about individual components of different applications, right? If I've changed my business services, like the example I gave before, a credit check into these individual little pieces, now I got to monitor those, make sure those are being performed, nobody's trying to hack those different pieces. I can set up business rules that go along with that, right? My credit check, I might have a bean counter inside my organization saying, you know what? I need to see the number of rejects we get for a credit check on a monthly basis. And then they can figure out, okay, are our business rules set up properly? I want to integrate this particular credit check. I've integrated it with these 4 applications. I want to do it with a 5th application, and I want to make sure that the security between these 2 applications are okay. So the management tools that go along with the SOA Suite are absolutely essential for managing all of these different complex pieces. Does anybody know what BPM stands for? Business Process Modeling. That's a huge thing, right? All businesses are trying to say, let's get as much human interaction out of our business processes as possible. How do we model these things inside of a typical application? You're always going to have human interaction. Somebody has to sign off on a regular request. Somebody has to approve a piece of paper that before it gets promoted on there. But we want to try to model our business processes and set up that process inside of our application so that automatically when somebody signs off on a piece of paper, the next person gets an email and says, okay, it's time for you to take a look at this and sign off on it. A particular invoice, if I'm going to give a 20% discount to one of my best customers, I want to automatically go from the salesman to the manager to say, okay, do you approve this 20% discount for this particular really good customer of mine? We want to automate as many of those things as possible, get human interactions out of it. Business process modeling is great for that. Oracle Service Bus, I talked about that before. How do I manage all of these different pieces coming across all over the place? I got a web service and maybe I'm interacting in a business-to-business type application where I'm going to interact with a vendor, and because the vendor is so powerful, I don't get to decide what the web service is going to look like. They're going to tell me what the web service looks like. Maybe I'm an appliance company and I say, okay, well, I want to sell Sony TVs. So, okay, Sony, here's my web service. And they go, no, we're not creating one just for you, Chris's television company out in Colorado. No, we're not doing that. If you want to interface with us, this is how you do it. Well, if I have an existing web service set up, I don't want to have to rewrite it every time. Oracle Service Bus is real good for translating information, translating web services to say, okay, Sony is going to set up their business-to-business web service in a particular way. I'm going to create something at the Oracle Service Bus level that translates the information around. Maybe I'm getting information that I want to send off automatically as part of my business process modeling. Every time an invoice comes in from Sony, I want to send it off to this particular VP. I can do that through the Oracle Service Bus. I can version different web services together. This was a big challenge for a lot of people when they create a web service and they say, okay, here's how you can interface with our system. So the other company out here develops a client and says, okay, now I can get information from your company and everything like that. Well, what happens when I update the web service? I add a whole bunch of new functionality to it. Instead of my credit check just checking for vendors, now it checks for vendors, individuals, government stuff, and I create a new web service that has all these new inputs. Well, guess what? This client application interfacing with my web service breaks. Because now I don't have just 2 or 3 inputs and maybe 1 output. I have 6 inputs and 2 outputs, or I change these things around. The Oracle Service Bus is a great way for you to version your web services. To say, okay, somebody called this web service, but they're expecting 2 inputs and 1 output. Oh, they want version 1 of the web service. Somebody else calls the same web service and they put in 6 inputs and 2 outputs. Oh, they want version 2 of the web service, right? Polymorphism, is everybody familiar with that concept in the Java world? I can do that through an Oracle Service Bus. Web Center, we talked about before, a whole bunch of really cool portal type features. I know I'm running out of time here. Forms, reports, portal discover, Oracle Discover. OBIE, a huge push behind that. Right, we gather all this information, big data. Has everybody heard that term? Right, I hate that because it's just so wishy-washy, big data. Okay, I have terabytes and terabytes of information inside my organization. What do I do with it? What does it mean? Oracle Business Intelligence allows us to slice and dice that information in a million different ways so that we can go through and get information. Oh, I hear people clapping. I know I'm running out of time. Identity management, we talked about that before. Web tier, we talked about that before. The SOA suite, comprehensive, hot, pluggable software to build, deploy, manage Oracle service architectures. Again, the thing to understand about SOA, 2 major things, right? A bunch of standards, so your developers are going to have to learn XML, they're going to have to learn SOAP, they're going to have to learn EPL, they're going to have to learn all these different technologies. And a philosophy. It's really a way of saying, how can I break this particular piece of code into this little reusable piece? Development languages have that, right? What are they called? Procedures and functions, right? I don't write one huge application that's 10,000 lines of code. I try to break it down to procedures and functions. But the limiting factor is if I use PL/SQL to write a procedure, or let's say I use Java on a Linux platform, pretty much the only thing that can call that procedure or library is another Java program. Yes, I know there's a whole bunch of translational things where a C# program can call a Java program, but they all suck, right? Is anybody familiar with those? I mean, they're all horrible to use. Web services allows me to say, okay, I don't care what development language, I don't care what I'm serving this up in. Am I using Apache? Am I using Weblogic? Is it Java? Is it Unix? Is it a Windows box? I don't care, because it's a standard. I can develop these things and deploy them and have people access them relatively easily. That's really the power that goes behind SOA Suite and web services. Oracle Service Bus, we talked about that before, all of the really cool things. Web Center, again, a lot of really cool things in terms of content management, getting information out to people, letting people customize their own web page. Right? Isn't that great? A lot of news pages you can go through and say, you know what, I'm a big sports fan, but I don't really want to see stuff about football or soccer. You know, I'm a baseball fan. I just want to say, and you can customize your pages. Web Center allows you to do that. So people inside your organization can customize